Welcome back. At a time in our country when there is so much partisanship, a new movie has been released about a Connecticut politician who approached his work trying to bring people together. I'm talking about U.S. Senator Joe Lieberman. A new movie has just been released that looks at how Lieberman lived his life. It's called Centered, Joe Lieberman. And there are upcoming screenings at both UConn and Yale. Let's take a look at a clip from the movie's trailer.
Throughout my career, I have been persistently, stubbornly bipartisan.
It was about how do we address the issue and help the American people.
He is not a cookie-cutter Democrat.
He was strong in defense.
The civilized world has often had to meet force with force.
More liberal on social issues.
I welcome the president's support of a new Clean Air Act.
He was ahead of the curve on the environment, on gun control.
I'm here because country matters more than party.
That was a clip from the movie, and now joining us is Jonathan Gruber, the director of the film. He's joining us via Zoom. Jonathan, welcome. I watched the movie, and anyone who followed Joe Lieberman's career is going to recognize a lot of the characters who played a role in his story. Lots of great historical footage combined to tell his story. Was that your goal?
It all started basically because of, as you had said at the top, that we're kind of the extremes have taken over politically, and there was a story going out in early 2021 about the Secret Service had not been treated very nicely by someone who they were protecting. So someone sent out, a colleague sent out an email, said, "Oh, I was at the 2000, I was fundraising for Gore Lieberman, you know, when they were running for the White House, the Democratic ticket. I was in the kitchen, the Secret Service was saying how amazing Joe and Hadassah were, that they're always looking out for us. Are you well fed? Are you taken care of?" And I just thought that's a great little story. It just sparked my my interest in saying let's tell that in a bigger story, which is about a guy who was really, you know, you could disagree with him, but he wasn't disagreeable, and he could work with all sides. So my goal was really to tell his story about a man who was centered not just politically, but centered in his faith and sort of his morals. I mean, actually, I just saw someone online refer to it as radical centrism, which I really like.
That's a great term. I told you before we started, I think I first met Joe Lieberman, I think I was 14 or 15 as a high school reporter at the East Lyme High School Viking Saga. He was nice to me then. I dealt with him a lot during my career here at Channel 3, and he was always just a lovely guy to deal with, just on a personal level. But politically, there's a lot of important things that he was a part of. Things like Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Obamacare. As you kind of move through it, it was striking to me, even as someone who watches the news as close as I do, how many big moments in history, the first Iraq War, he played such a pivotal role in these big moments.
I think aside from presidents, really, in the last 40 or 50 years, there's no one more consequential than Senator Lieberman. And he was there. You see these signing ceremonies. There's President, you know, George W. Bush, and there's Joe Lieberman. You see President Obama, and there's Joe Lieberman. So he, you know, really was interested in working together to get things done. One thing I should say is that not everything that we covered, he had controversial positions. He wasn't towing the party line. And, you know, I was interested in talking to him about that. He knew that when we sat down, he said, "I know it's not going to be all hugs and kisses." And, you know, to his credit, he was really self-aware and was open about talking about things, even some of the regrets that he had, you know, some mistakes. I think it says really a lot about his leadership and who he was as a person.
I think one of the big things about who he was as a person was how important family and his faith were to him. The importance of the Sabbath. He was running as vice president on a national ticket, and he still insisted on being home with his family. And I think the quote was, if I can be with my family and be in my home for that one day of the Sabbath, I can do anything the other 6 days of the week. And also his relationship with Hadassah. She's been a guest on this program. I think he may have stuck his head into the back of that interview when she was on here with us a few years ago. And they really, you know, second marriages for both of them, and yet it was really a long-time love story.
Yeah, they're tremendous together. That was something we covered also, you know, that they both were married previously. And my background is as a journalist, so that to me was interesting. But Hadassah, people may or may not know, was not born in this country. She was an immigrant. And I think that Joe sort of elevating in the public space, becoming a U.S. senator, was really her saying she was a Holocaust survivor. And so her ability, she was married to a U.S. senator after surviving the Holocaust, and she and he, as Jews, it was really sort of a fist in the face of Hitler.
All right, well, the big thing, you called the film centered, and his bipartisanship is such a big part of the story. I want to play a clip for our viewers. It's 40 seconds long, but it talks about just that bipartisanship that was so important to him. Let's take a look at this clip from the film.
I'm fed up with the partisanship and the bitterness in our politics. There's too much personal hatred.
It was about crossing that aisle, trying to build consensus.
He was principled but pragmatic.
I have been a bipartisan centrist really throughout my career.
Centrism meaning not that you're always moderate, but you're always trying to solve problems and compromise.
It's important to be open to civilized, respectful debate with people to try to find common ground and get something done.
It's such an interesting place to be, and you talked about his role in history, but if you look at some of his positions, very pro-environment, pro many social services, but also very hawkish on defense, and some of the fiscal issues. He was pretty, conservative as well in some things. He's sort of a complex guy to understand, and it makes sense that he would be in the center. Do you agree?
We're all complex. And I think, that we live in a time now politically where people are saying, if you don't agree with me 100%, you're my sworn enemy. And that's not going to work in this country. And I think that Joe, unlike saying, look how far we've fallen, is a model for where we can go. In terms of, bipartisanship, I don't think there are many films where you could have Rosa DeLauro, a purple-haired 80-year-old tattooed grandma from New Haven, and then right after that in the film is Lindsey Graham, who's basically her polar opposite in the Senate, talking about Joe and bipartisanship.
Just about a minute left. I want to ask you this, though, Jonathan. You started working on this film. You did interviews with Joe. You prepared the film. But Joe died before the film could be released. Take me through that. You actually were able to show him the film shortly before that?
He saw what we thought was the final cut and was, very complimentary about it, even though it wasn't all positive, and said it's a great legacy for my public service. That was an email he sent me, and then he died 6 days later. So he got to see 95% of the film. We had to pivot a little bit, and then I went back and kind of added a few bites that I think makes it a little bit more poignant. There's a scene at the very end where he's on the Conan O'Brien show in 2000. He's singing "My Way," and it was kind of chilling, the lines that he was singing after he passed away.
Yeah, it was, and he had sung that at a campaign rally earlier in his career as well. So it was his song. "Doing It My Way" was for sure his principle. Super interesting. If you're someone who's from Connecticut or a political buff, definitely check it out. Jonathan Gruber, thank you so much for being with us. Great film, and we appreciate you sharing a little time with us here on CT 25.
Thanks. Centeredfilm.com for all the screenings.
See, that's a good filmmaker right there. You can also go check out the film if you'd like to watch it. There are 2 upcoming screenings here in Connecticut. As we mentioned, there's one Tuesday at 4 o'clock at UConn. It's at the Conover Auditorium at the Dodd Center for Human Rights. Tickets there are limited. There's also a screening later this month, Monday, April 28th at Yale. For more information or for tickets, head to centeredfilm.com/screenings.